Now we read chapter 14 of The Cricket in Times Square by George Selden. Chapter 14, Orpheus. Chester didn't have long to wait. In a few minutes, Tucker came bounding into the newsstand and up to the stall on the shelf. Harry followed him, ambling silently along, as always. Tucker Mouse took himself very seriously now that he was the manager of a famous concert artist. "Good evening, Chester," he said. "You should excuse the suggestion, please, but I thought your tempo was off tonight, and the Stars and Stripes forever. You can't afford to relax just because you're on top, you know. And now let us begin the practicing." Chester crawled out of the matchbox. "Can't I even say hello to Harry?" he asked. "So, say hello," said Tucker Mouse. "Hello, Harry." "Hello, Chester." So the greetings being over, let us get on with the practicing. Chester looked at Harry and shook his head. The cat smiled and winked. Tucker twisted the dial. Wearily, Chester crossed his wings into the position for playing. There was an Irish jig on the radio. The cricket prepared to fling himself into the first wild strains of the jig. But suddenly, he dropped his wings and said, "I'm just not up to it tonight." "What's the matter?" asked Tucker. "I don't feel like playing," said Chester. "You don't feel like playing?" the mouse exclaimed. "That's like the sun saying, 'I don't feel like shining.'" "Well, sometimes there are cloudy days," said the cricket. "Can't I have a rest too?" Tucker Mouse was very much flustered. "Let him take a day off," said Harry Cat. "What's the matter, Chester? Is fame beginning to get you down?" "I guess I'm just feeling Septemberish," sighed Chester. "It's getting toward autumn now, and it's so pretty up in Connecticut. All the trees change color. The days get very clear, with a little smoke on the horizon from the burning leaves. Pumpkins begin to come out." "We can go up to Central Park," said Tucker. "The trees change their color there too." "It isn't the same," said Chester. "I need to see a shock of corn." He paused and fidgeted nervously. "I didn't mean to tell you yet, but you may as well know. I'm going to retire." "Retire?" shrieked Tucker Mouse. "Yes, retire," said Chester softly. "I love New York, and I love to have all these people listen to me. But I love Connecticut more, and I'm going home." But, but, Tucker Mouse was spluttering helplessly. "I'm sorry, Tucker, but I've made up my mind," said Chester. "What about Mario?" said the mouse. "He wants me to be happy," Chester answered. "He said he wished I'd never come to New York if I was going to be miserable." "But all the human beings," Tucker waved his front legs. "All the sufferings, the thousands you're playing gives pleasure too. What about them?" "My playing gives pleasure to a lot of people in Connecticut too," said Chester. "Who?" asked Tucker Mouse scornfully. "Oh, woodchucks and pheasants and ducks and rabbits, and everybody else who lives in the meadow or the brook. I have a bullfrog tell me once that he enjoyed my music more than anything else, except the sound of rain on the pond where he lived. And another time a fox was chasing a rabbit around my stump, and they both stopped to listen while I was playing." "What happened?" said Tucker. "The rabbit made it to his hole," said Chester. "I began the fox's favorite song just as he was about to chase him again, and he stayed to listen. Now I couldn't do that for any human being in the subway station." "I wouldn't be so sure," said Tucker Mouse. He turned to the cat. "Harry, say something. Make him stay." "Yes, Harry," said Chester. "What's your opinion?" Harry Cat sat perfectly still a moment. His whiskers were wiggling, which was a sign that he was thinking very hard. "My opinion," he said finally, "is that it's Chester's life, and he should do what he wants. What good is it to be famous if it only makes you unhappy?" Other people have retired at the peak of their careers. In all honesty, however, I must add that I will be dreadfully sorry to see him go. Tucker Mouse scratched his left ear. Always a good sign. Something about that phrase, "peak of their careers," struck his imagination. "There would be a lot of glory, I suppose," he said, "giving everything up just when he's on top. What a gesture!" The idea took hold of his tiny mouse's mind. "I can see it all now. At the summit of his success, that's the same as the peak of his career, isn't it?" "Just the same," said Harry Cat, grinning at Chester. "At the summit of his success, he vanishes." Tucker raced back and forth on the shelf. "The papers will go crazy. Where is he? Where did he go? Nobody knows. He leaves behind only a beautiful memory." "How touching! How lovely!" His voice cracked. "The only thing that worries me," said Chester Cricket, "is what will happen to the newsstand if I go." "Don't worry about that," said Harry Cat. "This newsstand has been touched by the golden finger of fortune. They'll probably make a national park out of it." "Do you really think so?" said Chester. "Well, even if they don't," Harry answered, "I'm sure the Bellinis will do very well. They're famous now too." "So when do you plan to make it final?" asked Tucker. Chester thought a moment. "Today is Thursday," he said. "How about tomorrow night?" "Friday is an excellent day for retiring," said the mouse. "If I ever retire from scrounging, it will be on Friday." Chester Cricket heaved a big sigh. "Oh, I feel better," he said. "If you want me to learn some new pieces for tomorrow now, I will." "Why bother?" said Harry Cat. "Tonight's your last full night in New York. You may as well enjoy yourself." "Come to the drain pipe," said Tucker Mouse. "We'll have a party in honor of your retirement. I have plenty of food and no matches to burn the place up." So the three friends hopped, scuttled, and padded across to Tucker's home, where a fine farewell feast was held and it was thoroughly enjoyed by all. The next day at 5 minutes to 6, Chester was about to begin the last public piece he would ever play in New York City. It was Friday night, the busiest time of all. Besides the commuters coming home from work, the station was swarming with men and women who were leaving the city for the weekend, on their way to Grand Central Station. But they all stopped to listen to Chester. There were so many people crowded around the newsstand that the police had to keep the aisles to and from the subway trains open with ropes. The Cricket had just finished his most beautiful concert. For this final encore, he wanted to play the sextet from an opera called Lucia de la Miremour. It had been written for 6 people, but even though he was very talented, Chester could do only one part. So he took the tenor's music because it carried the main theme of the most of the time. They didn't know it, but Chester was playing the sextet in honor of the whole Bellini family. He was Papa's favorite of favorites, and Mario and Mama loved it too. Chester wanted them to always remember him playing this piece. As he struck up the first notes, a sigh of pleasure came from Papa Bellini, and he settled back on the stool with his eyes closed. Mama leaned against the side of the newsstand, resting her head on one hand. At the sound of the familiar strains, without her meaning to, a smile spread over her face. Mario was bending over the cricket cage, fascinated by the way Chester moved his wings when he played. And he was awfully proud that it was his pet that everyone was listening to. Over in the drain pipe opening, Tucker and Harry were sitting side by side. The animals were the only ones who knew that it was his farewell performance, and it made them feel solemn and a little sad. but the music was so sweet that they couldn't help but be happy too. "It's the sextet from Lochi the Murmurer," announced Tucker Mouse, who had become quite an expert on all things musical during the past week. "Too bad there aren't 5 other crickets like Chester," whispered Harry Cat. "They could do the whole thing." Then they too were silent, and for as long as the music lasted, no one moved a hair or a whisker. Chester's playing filled the station, like ripples around a stone drop into still water. The circles of silence spread out from the newsstand, and as the people listened, a change came over their faces. Eyes that looked worried grew soft and peaceful. Tongues left off chattering, and ears full of cities rustling were rested by the cricket's melody. The men at the other newsstand heard Chester and stopped shouting for people to buy their newspapers and magazines. Mickey the counterman heard him and left off making a Coca-Cola. Three, girl, three girls, eh. Three girls came to the door of the Loft's candy store. Passengers coming up from the lower level paused before asking the policeman for directions. No one dared break the hush that had taken hold of the station. Above the cricket cage, through a grate in the sidewalk, the chirping rose up to the street. A man who was walking down Broadway stopped and listened. Then someone else did. In a minute, a knot of people was staring at the grate. "What is it? An accident? What's happening?" Whispers passed back and forth in the crowd, but as soon as there was a moment of silence, everyone could hear the music. People overflowed the sidewalk into the street. A policeman had to stop traffic so nobody would get hurt. And then everyone in the stopped cars heard Chester too. You wouldn't think a cricket's tiny chirp could carry so far. But when all is silence, the piercing notes can be heard for miles. I heard the cricket one night when we were all sleeping. I had to take the crickets out the house because it was chirping so loud. Me and Daddy woke up.
I didn't wake up. I went to sleep.
I know, but it was singing so loud. We had to let him out the house because we can't sleep because it was chirping so loud. It was probably Chester because he's from Connecticut.
And you know what? One day, I don't have any cricket, but the cricket, you know what? They don't wake me up. I put the cricket in here, it still don't wake me up. But I pray to God for me to go to sleep.
Alright. Traffic came to a standstill. The buses, the cars, men and women walking. Everything stopped. And what was strangest of all, no one minded, just this once. In the very heart of the busiest of cities, everyone was perfectly content not to move and hardly to breathe. And for those few minutes while the song lasted, Times Square was as still as a meadow at evening, with the sun streaming in on the people there and the wind moving among them as if they were only tall blades of grass. Chapter 15. Grand Central Station. After the concert, Mom and Papa Bellini had to go off for the evening. They left Mario in charge of the newsstand and told him they would be back later to hold him close up.
Somebody is watching.
That's fine. The boy took Chester out of the cricket cage, balancing him on one finger. He was glad that they were going to have some time to themselves for a change. First, he took a cardboard sign he had printed saying, "Next concert, 8 a.m., and leaned it up against the cage. "That'll keep people from bothering us about when you play next," he said. Chester chirped, but he knew he wouldn't be playing the next morning at 8 a.m. "Now we have supper," said Mario. He unwrapped a fried egg sandwich for himself and brought over a mulberry leaf from the cash register drawer for Chester. The mulberry leaves were kept in the compartment next to the quarters. For dessert, there was a Hershey bar, a smidgen from one corner for Chester and the rest for Mario. Then after dinner, they began to play games. Leapfrog was one they enjoyed very much. Mario made a fist and Chester had to jump over it. The trick was that Mario could put his fist anywhere he wanted inside the newsstand and Chester still had to land just on the other side of it. They kept score for half an hour. Chester had 34 hits to 5 misses, which was quite good, considering the hard places Mario found to put his fist. Hide and seek was fun too. Mario closed his eyes and counted, and Chester hid somewhere in the newsstand. Since there were piles of papers all over, and since he was very small himself, the cricket found lots of good hiding places. If Mario couldn't find him in a few minutes, Chester would give a quick chirp as a hint. But it was hard to tell whether the sound came from behind the alarm clock or from the Kleenex box or from the cash register drawer. If Chester had to chirp 3 times, it was understood he had won the game. About 10 o'clock, Mario began to yawn and they stopped playing. The boy sat on the stool, with his back resting on the side of the stand, and Chester gave him a private recital. He didn't play any of the things he'd learned, just made up one of his own pieces as he went along. And he played very softly so the people in the station wouldn't hear and come over. He wanted this to be for Mario alone. As he listened, the boy's eyes slowly closed and his head dropped over on one shoulder, but through his sleep he could still hear the cricket's silvery chirping. Chester ended his song and sat on the shelf, looking at Mario. A psst sound came up from the floor, just as it had on his first night in the newsstand. The cricket looked over. There was Tucker again gazing up at him. It struck Chester what a funny but likable expression the mouse's face always wore. "You better hurry," whispered Tucker. "Harry found a timetable and the train leaves in an hour." "I'll be over in a minute," Chester called down to him. "Okay," the mouse answered, and scooted across the station floor. Mario's right hand was...
Oh, he's saying you have to open that guy.
No, he has to go because that's the last train for the night. Chester wants to go back in Connecticut. "Okay, I'll be over in a minute," Chester called down to him. "Okay," the mouse answered, and scooted across the station floor. Mario's right hand was cupped in his lap. The cricket jumped down into the palm of it. In his sleep, the boy felt something and stared. Chester was afraid he would wake him up, but Mario only settled in a new position. The cricket lifted his wings and drew them lightly together. There was all of his love and goodbye too, in that one chirp. Mario smiled at the familiar sound. Chester looked around at the newsstand, the box of Kleenex, the alarm clock, Papa's pipe. When he came to the cash register, he paused. Quickly springing to the edge of the drawer, he vanished back into the darkness. When he came out again, the little silver bell was hooked over his left front leg, holding it tight against him to muffle the tinkle. He jumped to the stool, to the floor, and out the crack. "What's the bell for?" asked Tucker when he arrived at the drain pipe. "It's mine," said Chester. "Mario said so, and I want it to remember everything by." Oh, he brought with him the bell. Look, there's Chester bringing the bell. It's so cute. Chester bringing the bell. Tucker Mouse rummaged through the crowded corner of his home, which was a pantry, and found a tiny package bound with scotch tape. "I packed some supper for you to have on the train," he said. "Nothing very much. I mean, delicious, of course, a piece of steak sandwich and a chocolate cookie, but none too good for such talent." "Thank you, Tucker," said Chester. He wanted to sound very cheerful, but the words came out short of gulpy. "Well, I guess we should go," said Harry Cat. "I guess so," said Chester. He took one more look through the drain pipe. From down the tracks came the murmur of the shuttle. Mario was still asleep in the newsstand. The neon lights shed their endless blue-green glow. The cricket wanted to remember every detail. "It's funny," he said at last. "Sometimes the subway station looks almost beautiful." "I've always thought so," said Tucker. "Come on," said Harry Cat. He and Tucker padded along beside Chester up to the sidewalk. Above ground, the night was fresh and clear, not as hot as summer or as cold as autumn. Chester jumped up on Harry's back and took hold of the further. He could probably have made it down to Grand Central Station jumping by himself, but it saved time to be given a ride, and cruising the streets would have been a problem too for a cricket raised in Connecticut. But Tucker and Harry were experts at traveling in the city. Not a single human being saw them as they glided soundlessly under cars that lined 42nd Street. When they reached the station, Harry led the way through a maze of pipes and deserted rooms and back halls down to the level where the trains were. He was a great explorer. Harry Cat and knew most of the secret ins and outs of New York City. The late local express was leaving on track 18. Chester hopped onto the rear platform of the last car and settled himself in a corner that would be out of the wind. And there were only a few minutes left before the train started. "How will you know when you get to Connecticut?" said Tucker. "You were buried under sandwiches when you left there." "Oh, I'll know," said Chester. "I'll smell the trees and I'll feel the air and I'll know." No one said anything. This was the hardest time of all. "Maybe you could come back for a visit next summer," said Harry Cat. "Now that you know the way, you know the way." "A return engagement at the newsstand," said Tucker. "Maybe I can," said Chester. There was another pause. Then the train gave a lurch forward, and as soon as it started to move, the three friends all found that they still had millions of things to say. Harry shouted that Chester should take care of himself. Tucker told him not to worry about the Bellinis. He would look after them, and Chester just kept chirping goodbye as long as he could. For a while the two who stayed could see the cricket waving, but then the train rushed away into the darkness of the tunnel and was lost. They strained their eyes through the blackness. "Did you hear another chirp?" said Tucker after a minute. "Come on, Tucker," said Harry. "Let's go home." Together they tramped up to Times Square and down the drain. Neither one of them said a word. They looked at the hall. Mario hadn't wake up yet. "He's going to be very unhappy," said Tucker. Mama and Papa Bellini came up the stairs from the lower level, Mama gasping from the climb. Papa gently shook Mario awake. Suddenly, Mama's gasping stopped and she said, "Where's the cricketer?" They searched the newsstand completely but couldn't find him. Mama was sure that the man who tried to steal the bill had come back and kidnapped him. She wanted to call the police. Papa thought he might have stepped out for a breath of fresh air. But Mario was quite thinking. He looked through the cash register drawer in every compartment and then pulled the drawer out completely. The back space was empty, except for Mama's earring. "He won't come back," said Mario. "How do you know?" said Papa. "The bill's gone," said Mario. "You and I and the cricket were the only ones who knew where it was. If a thief had taken it, he would have taken the money from the cash register too. My cricket took it and went home." Mario's voice dropped off abruptly, but then it came back firm. "And I'm glad." Mama was about to exclaim that she didn't believe it, but Papa put his hand on her arm. He said he wasn't sure, but it might be. Mario didn't say anything anymore because he knew. They put on the cover to the newsstand and went down to their subway. Tucker Mouse looked at Harry Cat. "He knows," he said. Harry swished his tail around him and said, "Yes, he knows." They were so relieved that for a minute neither of them moved. It was all right now. Chester was gone, but it was all right for everybody. After a while they went back and lay down on the shredded newspapers, but neither of them seemed to be able to fall asleep. Tucker Mouse changed his position. "Harry, Harry," he said. "Yes," said Harry Cat. "Maybe next summer we could go to the country." "Maybe we can. I mean, the country in Connecticut," said Tucker. "I know what you mean," said Harry Cat. Oh, that's it. Sweet, sweet, sad story. Good night, son. Love you.